Being a Dolphins fan has become tiresome and tedious as of late. Every year produces a mixed bag of results and even more mixed expectations for the following year. For far too long, Dolphins brass has tried to sell the narrative that we're so close, we're right there. But the sad truth is, the only thing that the Miami Dolphins need this offseason is awareness, acknowledgement, admittance, and acceptance that we need to rebuild. The Dolphins have been in a perpetual state of rebuild since before Dan Marino retired. I believe that's why he was never quite able to capture that ever-elusive trophy we all so covet. And although the Dolphins made the playoffs 2 consecutive years after Marino's retirement, they would follow that up with only 2 more appearances in the following 16 years. Once in 2008, when interim head coach Tony Sparano, with the help of quarterback Chad Pennington and the running back tandem of Ronnie Brown and the recently returned Ricky Williams, conquered the AFC East with an 11-5 Wildcat record, only to get knocked out in the first round of the playoffs. Although they played well and took the record for the biggest turnaround in league history, they went 1-15 the year before, they would not prevail beyond that and would also not revisit the playoffs or even post a winning record until almost a decade later, 2016. This also happened to be head coach Adam Gase's first year on the job, and after opening to a sluggish 1-4 start, the team rallied to finish 10-6, qualifying for the playoffs once again. However, starting quarterback Ryan Tannehill was injured before completing the campaign, and backup Matt Moore had to take over, leading the Dolphins into the playoffs against the Pittsburgh Steelers, where they would be embarrassed out in an ass-kicking for the ages. This is already getting so depressing. But needless to say, expectations were quite high, and Doll fans everywhere rejoiced in the finding of a head coach seemingly worthy of the job. He seemed to have that fire and passion and the ability to galvanize a team behind his leadership. However, during training camp the following year, 2017, Tannehill re-injured his knee, forcing him to miss the entire season and prompting head coach Adam Gase to sign, of all fucking people, Smokin' Jay Cutler, a then-retired quarterback who's only made the Pro Bowl 1 time, with 1 playoff victory and 0 Super Bowl appearances, dubbed by Donovan McNabb to be the Tony Romo of the Midwest. Fitting. Now I understand Coach Gase chose that route due to his own familiarity with Cutler, having previously coached him in Chicago during Cutler's statistically best year. However, it can be argued that he played better the year before, as the only career benchmark he set that year was his passer rating. Just about everything else dropped from the year before. Regardless, he posted losing records both seasons and all but 3 seasons of the 7 that he spent in Chicago. Clearly a better option than free agent Kaepernick, whom has won 4 playoff games in his career, earning a Super Bowl appearance, and the year before played in 12 games, posting the following numbers: 196 completions on 331 attempts for a completion percentage of 59.2%. Over 2,200 yards, 16 touchdowns to just 4 interceptions, as well as 2 scores on his feet. San Fran posted a sorry-ass record that year, but it wasn't because of Cap. He did his job. So, to say that Miami not at least bringing him in to work out was a football decision is foolish. To say that the offense would have to be changed to accommodate his skill set is also foolish, considering he has a similar, if not the same, skill set as Tanny, with the exception that he can do it all better. I won't dive too deep into this because it's not what we're here for, but I will say this. Political stunts, stands, and feelings do not matter to the fans if the team is winning. Consequently, had the team brought Cap in, they likely could have done it for cheap, and that would have allowed them to keep him as a backup when Tannehill returned, and also would have prevented them from being in their current predicament of needing to draft a quarterback this year to act both as a backup and potential successor to Tanny, if they were, as they claim, committed to Tanny, which apparently they are, seeing as how they did not draft a quarterback. Which takes me into the Dolphins offseason so far. The first thing they did was jettison star players. The most notable, loved, and fan-friendly faces gone. As if things weren't bad enough the year before. They traded a running back whom achieved a status previously only held by 3 other men in NFL history. Back-to-back 200-plus yard games. By the way, if you're interested, those other 3 men are, in order of appearance, O.J. Simpson, who did it twice, once in 1973 and again in 76, Earl Campbell, who did it in 1980, and fellow former Dolphin Ricky Williams, who did it in 2002. But that's besides the point. I had no issues with them trading him, as he was sometimes a distraction and had problems cooperating with the coaching staff. And Miami also had a viable replacement waiting in the wings, whom blossomed after Ajayi's departure. My issue was with the compensation. They got just a 4th-round pick for him. A 4th-round pick. To quote my father, you can't even get a walk-on with that. And he's right. You are unlikely to get a guaranteed playmaker that far into the draft. Not that it hasn't happened before. For example, Joe Theismann, Rich Gannon, Darren Sproles, Steve Largent, and a handful of other guys you've probably never ever heard of were all 4th-round picks. But I digress. Miami traded away Jarvis Landry. Oh wait, I'm sorry. They traded a 3-time Pro Bowler whom led the league in receptions last year and also collected the most receptions by any player in their first 4 years. Because they didn't want to pay him. And of course, he wanted to be paid like a top receiver because in Miami he was the top receiver. But that's what Miami makes a habit out of. Saying that they want to draft and cultivate their talent, and then they fail to hang on to them. In exchange for Landry, the Dolphins got a 4th-round pick this year and a 7th-rounder in 2019. Must we go back over 4th-round picks? There have been great players selected that late. Hell, Brady was selected in the 6th round, but my point is that shit is not common. The team trimmed Ndamukong Suh, a move I actually agreed with. While Suh is a dominant player at his position, I personally never felt that his level of production commanded such a huge salary. For someone to be making more than the QB on the yearly basis, that player needs to deliver wins. Miami's record with Suh? 22-26. Impressive. The team asked 3-time Pro Bowl center Mike Pouncey to take a pay cut, which prompted him to request his release, which was then granted. In response to these departures, Miami proceeded to sign solid 30-year-old center Daniel Kilgore, as well as Super Bowl champion and 4-time Pro Bowl guard Josh Sitton. Actually not mad at that one either, but to replace the legendary Landry, Kansas City cast off Albert Wilson and 32-year-old clutch receiver Danny Playoff Amendola. Aside from sharing the Patriot way, I wonder how much use he'll get since the Dolphins aren't familiar with the playoffs. To supplement the running back room, the Dolphins signed the furiously professional Frank Gore, a Miami native that has broken 1,000 yards in 9 of his 12 seasons, made the Pro Bowl 5 times, and is on pace to replace Curtis Martin as the 4th all-time rushing leader in terms of yardage, only beat out by Barry Sanders, Walter Payton, and Emmitt Smith. Fun fact, all the other running backs in the top 11 on that list are Hall of Famers. To fix the backup problem, Miami decided to become the next chapter in the curious case of Brock Osweiler. And as anyone who knows me knows my opinion of him, Brock Osweiler sucks. Damn it! There have been other signings, but I'll spare you the details because they get less interesting, with the exception of the questionable signing of Gavin Escobar, a non-existent tight end that was most recently released by the Cleveland Browns. In the weeks leading up to the draft, I've been racking my brain trying to figure out what the best course of action would be for the Dolphins come draft time. And to me, the decision was obvious. They needed a quarterback. They needed one of the better quarterbacks in the bunch. From their spot at number 11, I figured the supposed top 4 would be gone, so the answer seemed clear. Lamar Jackson. The 2016 Heisman Trophy winner and the youngest player in history to be bestowed that honor, he did it at the age of 19. An electrifying playmaking South Florida native, whom threw for over 9,000 yards in his 3 years in college, also tossing 69 touchdowns to 27 interceptions and picking up over 4,000 yards and 50 scores with his feet. But no, Miami stuck with true Miami fashion and went with a safe pick instead. Highly touted safety prospect Minkah Fitzpatrick, which honestly is not a bad pick. He was definitely one of the top prospects in the draft and for sure at his position, but Miami didn't need a safety. Don't get me wrong, I agree with the mentality of taking the best player available. When you have a solid roster and you're coming off a winning season, like Jacksonville, they took a defensive tackle. Good pick, but they're secure everywhere else, so they don't need to rebuild. Back to that point though, best player available. Debatable. For a little context, Miami's current top star is a safety by the name of Rashad Jones. This two-time Pro Bowler had better numbers than Fitzpatrick coming out of college, and yet he wasn't drafted until the 5th round in 2010. This all plays into that line of thinking that I referenced earlier. This belief that we are a win-now kind of team and that the roster is 1 or 2 pieces away from contending, but in reality, the roster was already there before it began being parted out. And the most glaring concern on the entire team was the lack of depth at the quarterback position, the most important position in the game. That was on full display last year when Tannehill was injured before the season began and Cutler was brought in to do the Jay Cutler thing, which he did. Miami ranked 28th out of 32 teams in points scored per game. So the logical thing to do is to continue trying to fix the defense, right? Fun fact, the defense ranked 16th. This draft was an opportunity and the right time to take a chance, take a risk, get outside their comfort zone and outside the box. And they didn't take the opportunity. They backed down and went for the safe pick at a position that wasn't in need, but it was a player that had the least likelihood of being a bust. That was the move of front office executives that are way more concerned with their own self-preservation than they are the longevity and long-term success of the franchise. Stephen Ross needs to take notice and begin the renovations of those charged with running his franchise because they're running it nowhere fast. The source of the dysfunction? I believe it's Mike Tannenbaum, whom has been poisoning the Dolphins' decision-making for about 4 years. His most notable career achievement? The drafting of the Sanchez in New York. That's right, Mr. Butt Fumble himself. Since installing him in the rest of the front office, they have since successfully kept the wheels spinning in the mud just enough to give the impression of making progress. But they aren't actually going anywhere. It's just like in Paul Blart Mall Cop, where during the training session with the rookie, Paul instructs, when you approach the perp, you put your hand on your back-facing hip to give the impression that you've got a gun. But we all know you don't. That's exactly how this franchise is being handled right now. Smoke screens everywhere, empty promises, broken hearts, and ample amounts of disappointment. I was hoping that this draft, after coming off a 6-10 season, might be a bit of a reprieve. That they might pull out of the humdrum that has kept this once glorious franchise stagnant, but instead, we just got more of the same. Congrats to all the players who got drafted, to Minkah Fitzpatrick for joining the ranks, and to the other AFC East teams that took the opportunity to rearm in this draft. I think Greg Coate put it best in his article. The Dolphins needed a cannon. Instead, they got a Swiss Army knife. Now they have set the stage for my worst nightmares come true. I've always wanted to be on Tanny's side, and in his defense, he's shown steady improvement, especially in his first year under Adam Gase. However, now he has injured his knee twice. Same knee, 2 injuries. We can't expect him to get right back to where he was when he got hurt, if he ever does get back. He's now missed a full season and some change. And should he go down with another injury like that, it may be the last time we see him in a Dolphins uniform. And then what are we stuck with? Brock Osweiler? No way. I'll drive down there, kidnap him, and run out in his place before that happens. Like, hey Brock, you look significantly shorter than the last time I saw you. Don't worry about it. Anyways, thanks for tuning in to listen to me bitch about my team. I hope you got some laughs out of it and possibly something to think about. If there's something you would like discussed here, then please feel free to leave it in the comments, and of course, as always, like and subscribe so that you will be the first to find out when I drop my next video. I'm thinking it'll be my top 5 video games that deserve a quality film adaptation. See you next time.
Time to go to work, guys.